Not right now.
And with that, it's the Sports Take Lunch Break, brought to you by Office Essentials, the premier provider for all your office needs. I'm your host, Andrew Corns, and I've got the gang assembled again for another week jam-packed with St. Louis sports. On the agenda today, we've got Blues hockey now that the regular season is back in full swing, Cardinals postseason baseball with a massive Game 5 tomorrow, and we've got soccer talk with Stu as STLFC gears up for what we hope is a nice playoff run coming up. Let's jump right into it, guys. We're going to start off with the St. Louis Blues. We're a week into the season. We've got games coming up this week, Thursday at 6:30 at Ottawa, Saturday at 6 in Montreal, and then next Monday at noon at the New York Islanders. What do you guys see in terms of first week, early impressions? What do you expect for the next week?
I guess I'll jump in here first. I don't see a reason why we can't take all three of these games coming up. I think it's very early. Obviously, you don't have a really good gauge on teams, but I mean, you can look at a roster and kind of have an idea of what you're expecting. I don't see anything in Ottawa that scares me. I think a lot of people, including myself, are picking them to be the worst team in the league this year, or very close. So I'm chalking it up to a win. They're 0-2 right now coming out of the season, so far they're proving me and everyone else to be correct. Montreal, they lost Pacioretty. They've got some other pieces. They're not a terrible team. They've got Carey Price, who you can never argue against as one of the best in goal. I would assume he's going to start on Saturday. So they're 1-0-1. So, again, I'd like to see a win there. And then the Islanders game, it's a Monday game and it's early, right? So that's always a wild card when those games are early. I don't personally like them. I don't think the players like them. It throws off a rhythm.
Yeah, it seems like it's always the Islanders that do those afternoon games. I assume that's at the Coliseum. They've been having more issues this year with swapping between Barclays and Coliseum.
Yeah. So they don't have Tavares anymore, obviously. That's always the guy that scared me with the Islanders. They're 1-1. They're not a bad team, but again, we could win that game. So that's my take on those three games. I'll really quickly talk about my early takeaways. I did not catch the game last night. Unfortunately, I was playing, so I didn't get to see anything but just highlights as I could see it on the board. Early on, I thought the Blues game 1. Obviously, they came out with a lot of momentum. They looked really good, but I think they went a little too hard. I think they kind of lost some steam, and I think the Capitals are a good team, and they jumped all over us.
It was certainly expected, too, with all the pomp and circumstance before the game. They came out with that jump. You knew the energy level was going to drop pretty quickly.
And I think Washington did the same thing last year. I think they ended up losing their game as well. It might have been an overtime loss.
Yeah, Sean and I looked into the stats earlier in the week last week, and the last 10 teams that have won the Cup are 4-6 in their opener.
Yeah.
9 of those 10 had home games, so kind of makes sense.
I mean, I'm a nobody, and I just play pickup hockey, but I know you definitely, when you've got a big game like that, it just seems like it's almost like a runner's high. You get going, and then it's just you zap your energy, and you're out. So I'm not gonna worry too much about that. I thought they played a good game, and I mean, early on they looked freaking awesome. Sammy Blais has come out this year looking like the man we all hoped he would be. I'm not even expecting this kind of pace, but if he finds a way to keep this gear going, I think we've got something there.
I think he's kind of filling the maroon role personally with more offensive production, and he's in a contract year. Keep that in mind. I mean, he's definitely trying to make sure
he's much, much faster.
Tremendously. But he certainly brings that big body, and he likes to throw his weight around quite a bit.
On the downside, I've actually got Thomas. I know he's apparently injured. I haven't seen a lot into it, but I was not impressed game 1 with Thomas. I thought he was trying to do too much. There were multiple times that I counted where he either didn't make the right play, like dumping it in and going deep, or he was trying to make the move. Kind of looked like the old Perron to me, trying to do a little too much, holding onto the puck too much. And we all know he's got the skill, but I was not impressed. Knocked off the puck really easily, which was always my concern with him, with his size.
Yeah, he's still only 20, though.
I mean, there's nothing.
He's got plenty of time.
Right. And he didn't have a lot of preseason action either. I thought they played too many preseason games, but that last game that got canceled, he's definitely one of the guys who would have benefited from playing in that game. Sure. I think he looked pretty good against Detroit in that Craftville game or whatever it was. All things considered, I thought he looked pretty good in that game, but I think he just needed a little bit more time, or at least would have been better for him in this stage at this point for him to get a little bit more more time.
The guy for me that has done the least in terms of just from the eye test is Tarasenko, actually. And it's okay that, they're still getting points without Tarasenko putting up a bunch of numbers, but he's -2 on the year. He doesn't have a goal yet. So a little something to kind of keep in mind that he seems like he's kind of slow out of the gate.
He does seem to be streaky. He's one of those guys that he can go a couple games. I wouldn't say he's a Berglund where he goes for 20 games. But yeah, I could easily see him throwing, maybe against the Senators. Maybe he just needs a little extra jump against a weaker team that'll get him going. He's got that shot, so in any moment, he doesn't even have to have all the room in the world, but he can just fire off that snapshot and a goalie just can't read it, and there you go. There's a goal.
I still wonder, though. I mean, I had questions last year, most of the season, that I feel like this new breed of hockey player is so much, it's about pace and the speed. And when you see McDavid and Matthews and Aho and all these young guns, they're so quick. I don't think Tarasenko has that next level speed that some of those guys do. I almost feel like at some point he's going to get kind of lost in the shuffle. I don't see him as like a top 10 forward personally, but I think I'm also going against the grain from most St. Louis Blues fans on that.
Yeah, I think when you look at the capability he has to score a goal as quickly as he can from pretty much anywhere, and you look at a guy like, say, and no, I'm not saying he's Alex Ovechkin, but Alex Ovechkin's another guy who played in a little bit of a different time. He's not, he's toward the end, not one of the young guns, not the fastest guy, but a similar kind of player where if the Blues can get to a point where they're scoring a lot of power play goals, Tarasenko's potting a lot of those. I don't know. I think his ability to score still garners a lot of attention defensively from the other teams and creates space for some of the other guys. Shen makes a lot of his own room, but I think Tarasenko being out there draws attention that might otherwise be on some of the other guys on the ice, and so he's contributing. And I think he's a little bit of a slow starter, and I'm not really worried about him. I still think he'll score 30, 40 goals.
I can't agree more with your statement. He's not Ovechkin, but that shot. Ovechkin has been known for forever now. He just tees off from that face-off dot on the power play. And I was joking with a buddy of mine watching the first game about, why can't Tarasenko do it? But they actually did do it a couple times in game one. And I'm wondering with the addition of Falk being able to move the puck around a little better, I'm almost wondering if we're going to see more of those cross-ice. I mean, Pietrangelo just bombed that shot, and he had another goal last night, but his shot seems to be on point so far this year, and I'm wondering if maybe that's something that they've worked on, because our power play was probably one of the worst points of our game. If we could get that to click, that's something. But yeah, Tarasenko's never going to be McDavid. I wish he was, honestly. I kind of agree with you, Andrew. Last year, and I'm going to say it still, and I think we are kind of against the grain of St. Louis, but if the opportunity was right to possibly package something, that's something that we may need to look at, because I don't think his game is going to continue to translate into the new style. And don't get me wrong, I love the guy. He's a great hockey player. He's got that Russian style, though, like you said, the Ovechkin style. But you wonder, it's not normal to have a guy like Ovechkin that doesn't get hurt. Look at Evgeny Malkin, who we talked about in week one here, and my Pittsburgh Penguins that I picked is that team out of the East. I said they were going to get carried by Malkin this year, and nope, they're not, because Malkin got hurt. So he's going to be out for a long time, if not the whole season, but they're saying it's going to be a lot. So that style of play doesn't usually work. And as much as I love that shot that Tarasenko brings, he does seem to be a little one-dimensional in the fact that he doesn't make the real flashy goals that often. He doesn't deke three guys and score. He uses his shot, and I just don't know how long that's going to work.
Yeah, but his contract's up when he's 33, I think. So at 33, that's probably when his body's going to be breaking down, and at that point, you maybe just cut him loose so you have him another 4 years.
Yeah, his contract is 22-23, 7.5. And don't get me wrong, that deal would need to be very good for the Blues. You don't just give away arguably our best goal scorer since Brett Hull. You don't just dump him. And I'm not suggesting that by any means.
You can definitely make a case that he doesn't fit the best in Berube's structure. Like, you don't always have to have the best asset to be the best team. Like you could certainly make a case that if Tarasenko's not in the team, you have a different piece that plays the Berube style.
But they have to be able to put up those goals. You cannot just replace, 30, 40 goals in a season.
But I'd take another Ryan O'Reilly type player in this system than Tarasenko personally.
It'd have to be a Ryan O'Reilly that did what he did last year because, the goals, you got to be able to score goals. The NHL is still changing rules to try to get more goals, and I think we're going to see it again this year that there's going to be more goals scored this year.
Yeah, and I think too with the Blues now having such depth in scoring, apparently, it looks like potentially we're going to see that continue this season. That as the season gets a little bit older, I think Tarasenko will thrive in the sense that he doesn't have to be the guy to carry the team in the goal column. He doesn't have to be the guy. He doesn't have to score 40 goals to equal success for the team, and I still think he will. But I think it'll be to his benefit that sort of weight, that pressure for him, which he may put on himself anyway, but I don't think other people will be putting that pressure on him because either they think he's going to be sort of in decline in this system or just because of the nature of everyone else scoring goals. So I think it'll be a benefit for him in the long run.
John, you mentioned Ottawa earlier, and this is a quick question for you guys. Is Eugene Melnyk the worst owner in American sports right now?
Yes, but I don't think he's going to be in it much longer. So,
yeah, a short-held title, I think, because I can't imagine him finishing the season.
I'm still going to go with Kroenke personally, but
I wonder why Stuart picked Kroenke there.
Oh, I love him so much.
So, stepping aside from the Blues a little bit, is there another takeaway from the NHL in general over the first week that you wanted to kind of touch upon? Maybe something that caught you off guard or something that really stood out to you? For me, Dallas at 0-3. I know they played Boston, St. Louis, and Detroit. 2 of those were on the road, but I'm kind of shocked that Dallas doesn't have a point yet. And then the Red Wings are another team that I watched them in the Hockeyville game. I didn't get a ton of Red Wings games last season, but Sean, you and I have talked before. I think the addition of Steve Yzerman to their front office is a game changer for them. I think he's going to bring them back to prominence in a 2 or 3 year span. I didn't think it was going to be this year per se, but after watching a little bit of Red Wings hockey, I think they got a real shot to make the playoffs this year. They're young, they're talented. Yzerman knows what he's doing in the front office. He's going to draft well. They still have a name. People know the Red Wings. I think they're eventually going to attract free agent talent. So the Red Wings kind of caught me off guard early this week. But what do you guys think?
I would agree with that. Detroit's probably the biggest surprise in a positive way for me. I think if Jimmy Howard can be a average to above average, that they could really surprise a lot of people in that division. On the other side of it, it's got to be the Sharks for me. That the Sharks are struggling so much. I picked them to win the Pacific. People think it's Jumbo Joe's year, and while there's an awful lot of hockey left, obviously it just doesn't look good out of the gate for them. They seem to have a lot of the problems that maybe we thought they'd have later in the season, but they're already starting. Just not being able to come up with wins, and they're playing the Vegas, who's probably a lot better team than they are, but you still would think that they'd at least put a better showing out there than they have.
Yeah, I've kind of got this segmented as the good, the bad, and the ugly. For the good, I think the big surprise that I have this year is Buffalo. They've gone off to a pretty good start. I did not really see that coming.
They kind of did it last year, though, too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can hold it out. It's so early. Teams are still trying to get their name and trying to figure out what their game is. Carolina is a good, and I'm going to toot my own horn here because I said that I thought that somehow they always find a way to do it, and they're just kind of continuing off right with where they left off last year. So it'll be interesting to see how long they can keep that going. The bad, I have Dallas, Tampa, and the ugly, I have San Jose. Dallas, I mean, I can't toot my horn on this one because I have Dallas out of the West, and they're pretty abysmal right now. I just feel like it's one of those things where they've got all the pieces. They haven't just quite gelled yet. So I'm not – if I was a Dallas fan, I'm not worried yet. It's so early, but they do need to get it going. Otherwise, they're going to be the Blues of last year where they're going to have to dig themselves out of a huge hole. And let's just be honest, that doesn't happen very often. Tampa Bay, Stamkos has already called out his team. I don't know if you guys saw that. Said he's disappointed and they got to stop talking about it and just do it. We all know what happened last year in the first round of the playoffs, so the fact that they're already having issues in Tampa Bay surprises me. I think, Sean, you'd kind of talked kind of off there about how you could see them being that team that did it again, crashed again, and they might already be doing it in Game 3 of the NHL season. And then in San Jose, I am going to toot my horn again on this one because I mentioned that I don't know why people are picking them to do so well out of the Pacific. I know it's the Pacific, and it might be the weakest league or division in the league. I've watched all their games so far this year, and I'm not impressed with almost anything. Their goaltending, Martin Jones, I thought was going to be a goalie of the future. Right now, he looks like a goalie of the KHL or AHL.
He has no glove. Glove high every time.
Yeah, he's struggling. He's got to find his game. And you know what? You got Carlson and Burns, who unfortunately they kind of play an offensive style defense, and right now it is it's not doing well. They got shelled by Vegas. I mean, they almost got embarrassed. Honestly, it was a home at home, which was really odd to see in the beginning of the year. There's obviously the NHL is trying to make that a rivalry, and I would say that it is a pretty good rivalry. Those two teams do not like each other. It's funny to see Reeves and Kane going at it. Reeves called Evander Kane soft. And
well, it's interesting. Tampa and Florida also did a home and home to start off the season, or Tampa did Carolina and then Florida back to back. So interesting format scheduling change there. But with Tampa, I mean, it's only 3 games into the season, and Carolina has rattled off 4 straight overtime wins to start the season.
Some could say that's some pot luck there, but
yeah. So I mean, with a different break, Tampa's got 2 wins and a loss, and I don't think I'm too worried about them as far as predictions wise. They're just got a lot of talent there.
It's early. I mean, we could talk all day long about this, but it's so early. It's hard to really say a team's doomed or a team is just destined to win.
Is it too early in the season to talk about Jordan Binnington? And is he proving people wrong? Is he proving people right? Are people who were on his bandwagon going, there's no reason I can see for them to get off the bandwagon if that's where they are.
We did have a listener to the show specifically mention last night the fact that we went up against Toronto. They put up a ton of shots on them. They're offensive juggernaut. Skilled shots. He held his own really well. So did that kind of curb all the doubts from some of us. I'm specifically one of the doubters. I don't know. For me, I think he's been fine, and I think that's all they need him to be is fine. But I'm still not on the idea that Jordan Binnington's an elite goalie. I think he makes good saves. I think mentality-wise, he's certainly an improvement over Allen. But
yeah, I mean, it's a small sample size. He still hasn't put in a full season of work. It's not. He hasn't even played 50, 60 games. He's not been bad. You could tell the goal that he let in that overtime loss. He wanted it back. And I think I might have talked about that in one of the first episodes. How I'm not a big fan of a goalie showing that emotion. I hate when they look up at the sky and all that. But you know what? At the same time, it's kind of nice to see that he thought he could have had it, and he knows he should have had it. And he has a chip on his shoulder all the time. It's just the way he is. So he's going to battle. He's going to want that one back. The next time that comes in like that, I don't think he's going to let that in.
Yeah, a stat that I got this morning. He's faced 15 high danger shots and he's made 12 saves, which is
sounds good to me.
Very, very much above average. But again, it's been 3 games. Is he going to do that for another 50 starts?
If he does, he's the guy. I mean, he's there's no 1A 1B in my mind. He's the guy. His goals against average and save percentage are fantastic right now. If he continues to do what he's done in the first 3 games, I don't think we're talking about Allen starting 30-ish games like we were, a couple days ago.
And I don't even, and if he does, then great. And that means the Blues are probably doing really well.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if I like him or not. If I do, then great. But if I don't, he's still performing at a high level, and that's all that I really care about.
See, my worry is that we're squandering Allen's typical first half of the season, amazing 2 months. and we're going to end up starting him right in that January-February slump that he always gets every year. Not serious.
But is it because he gets tired, though? So maybe you could make the argument that, his new hot streak will be when he really starts and takes over in January. And then we have him going into those 2 battle months.
There we go. We just swap him every half season, and we have Binnington in the first half now in the second half. Stanley Cup number 2 is assured.
It is worth noting that Binnington did a lot of the home starts last season towards the back end, and Allen did a lot of the road starts. I think Allen started almost exclusively road games.
And he was doing really well.
And he did well. So I think in these 3 games coming up this week, I certainly expect him to probably slot in one of those games. Ottawa makes sense. You're going against a team that's not very good. It's a good chance to get Allen some confidence going against Ottawa. Montreal also fits the bill. So I see Allen starting one of those 3 games personally.
Yeah, and Allen's from Nova Scotia, or New Brunswick, rather. So I'd expect that for at least several of those games, he'll be in front of friends and family, which can be a pretty good motivator for a lot of people.
And one of the other questions that some of our listeners asked us to get into is the salary cap deep dive. We're going to do like 5 or 10 minutes on the salary cap. There's sort of rumors swirling around St. Louis. We're all kind of checking our phone with bated breath all day to see if Alex Pietrangelo signs that contract extension. We know his agents are in Toronto. There was some work yesterday. So given the Blues situation, what can we realistically expect in terms of Pietrangelo getting a contract? And what kind of numbers are we looking at on that extension? I'd heard rumors that he was looking for about 10. The team was offering 8.25. They'll probably meet in the middle. So thoughts on the cap situation?
I definitely say getting Pietrangelo for 8.5 or 9 would definitely be a pretty good deal for long term. You got a guy like that whose style is going to age a bit better. Plus, you overpay for he was our captain for the Cup, and he's going to have a statue of himself outside of Enterprise, Kiel, whatever the name stadium is in 15 years. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more to keep the guy around if we can. If we end up losing, we're kind of entering that situation now of a lot of those top tier teams seem to be in. For years, the Blues were locked into mid-level mediocrity that would make the playoffs and then you lose and you're stuck with a 14th overall pick, which is really, it's a crapshoot. You don't know what you're going to get that late in the first round most of the time. But now the Blues are kind of locking themselves into probably a future cap hell situation, if we're honest. And then maybe in 3 years we sell off a bunch of people and we're a terrible team for 3 years, but we get, 2 top 5 picks. And then like Chicago or some of these other teams that always bounce back and in 5 years after going bad, we're a top tier team again. And then it's just a cyclical process that we lock ourselves into until there's a situation where maybe the salary cap is gone and then it's always going to be Toronto and New York Rangers on top of those.
Well, I think they'll find a way to sign him. I think 9 sounds about right, $9 million. But how do you make that fit into the current cap situation? Andrew and I talked about this yesterday a little bit off the air, and if the Blues have just over $7 million in cap space, it looks like, for next year, how do you pay him $9 million? Where does the other money come from?
I mean, I think Alex Steen, Jaden Schwartz, and Tyler Bozak all have 2 years left on their deal. They're all between $5 and $6 million. One of those 3 makes sense to move if you're gonna do it, but they also all have either a full no trade clause or a modified no trade, so it kind of makes things a little sticky there.
Yeah, I mean, this was a bigger deal, I think, before the Shen signing, because that was big, and that just happened, this week. I'm looking at the numbers here, and honestly, with what we have, I don't see why we couldn't make the Pietrangelo thing work. I think before the Shen signing, you never know what the cap is going to be. I have to assume it's going to continue to creep up just a little bit every year until we get locked out and they talk about all that again. And you've got Fabry, who, let's be honest, this is the year that we decide what he's going to be. unless he does something crazy, I can't imagine we either A, offer him any more than what he's currently getting or even keep him. So there's some room there. He's making $900,000, I think, this year. You got Sammy Blay, who we just talked about earlier. He's going to command more money, and if he continues to do what he's doing, he's going to earn it. So we're going to lose some room there.
I do think the one expendable, though, is probably Vince Dunn, who's also an RFA this summer. He's not arbitration eligible. He's making nothing. $720,000 right now. If you sign Petro and get all the way up to the cap,
and don't forget Bouwmeester too. Bouwmeester is going to be up. I was against Bouwmeester for the last couple of years. After his injury, he just was not right. Although last year he came back and looked great. If we could find a way to get that veteran in, if his body is still capable, I'm okay with it, but I'm not going to offer him a ton. And he may be okay with that. I'm sure we do have a luxury in St. Louis where players love the city, it seems like, and they love playing for it. If he wants to take a discount, I think he's earned it. But again, his body is going to be the big variable there. But yeah, I think Pietrangelo at 9 or hopefully a little lower. I think we can do it. I think we have the room. I mean, again, there's some variables here. There's what the cap's going to be. I just have no reason to believe it wouldn't keep going up. And we've been spending to the limit, which is something that I don't think the Blues really did in the past. And that Stanley Cup's going to help. The revenue that was generated from that is going to allow the ownership group to spend up to that cap limit. And if they continue to make the playoffs, they're going to continue to have a little extra money, and they'll be able to freewheel a little bit more.
Well, I think most of the season Stillman's been in charge. We've spent up to the cap or near the cap.
Right.
We've been one of the top spending. I think starting off last season, we were the closest to the cap. I mean, it's all a technicality of who's the highest paying team when you have a salary cap. But
we're talking about like $100,000 we were from the cap.
Yeah. I mean, Stillman obviously pours his heart and his soul into it. So, no, it's maybe Army is banking on the salary cap going away in 2 years, and if that happens, then all of this is a kind of a moot point, and who knows what happens then. I mean, then Toronto fans get to get even louder and more aggressive, and maybe Rogers comes out and spends first $200 million hockey contract or something wild like that.
They also have to consider the expansion draft coming up.
Yeah.
You have some of the guys we already mentioned, Shen, maybe even Falk, some guys who could potentially be left unprotected.
Someone's going to go. I mean, that's just what that does.
It's just a matter of sort of that bridge to get to the expansion draft. You have to be able to fit in. If you're going to sign him now, you have to be able to fit Pietrangelo in for next season. And then the next season you have that expansion draft where you might get some of that relief. And I don't think it's a problem for them to spend up to the cap. Armstrong said this past offseason he didn't really want to do that, but Armstrong never really says what he's going to do.
And we have no reason to doubt what he's done.
Exactly.
Stuart, you brought that up, I think, last week. I don't have any real reason to doubt his abilities. He pulled off the Shen thing, and there were rumors for a while that Shen didn't want to be here. And now he's here, and he's signed long term. So,
yeah, as Sean said, I mean, Armstrong's such a wild card that I think, like I said, we're all just kind of checking our phone every 30, 40 seconds, just waiting for a deal to come out of left field. So again, we're all gonna be close on keeping our eye on the phone, but we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with some St. Louis Cardinals postseason Game 5 predictions.
This is Emily from Office Essentials. Did you know that germs on hands can be transferred up to 7 times, making frequently touched surfaces in the office hotspots for viruses? And a virus can spread through an entire office in just a few hours. Some germs can even live for days on hard surfaces. So hotspots like door handles, keyboards, light switches, desktops, and even elevator buttons should be cleaned even more often. And don't forget about the kitchen. Break rooms have some of the germiest surfaces in the entire office. Sink faucets, microwaves, and refrigerator handles too. Office Essentials can help you protect your office from sickness this flu season. Right now at stlofficesupplies.com, we're offering a free printable poster that you can print and hang around your office. It contains tips to help coworkers prevent the spread of the flu. Office Essentials is your hometown supplier of all the office supplies and furniture you need to run and grow your business. Learn more today at stlofficesupplies.com.
All right, we're back. We're going to shift our focus from Blues hockey over to postseason Cardinals baseball. It feels good to be back in the playoffs, guys. We've got Game 5 tomorrow at 4:02 p.m. We got Jack Flaherty on the mound. We're going to jump right into kind of the big hot topic. I've got Greg in. Greg Bussman's in for John, who took a step out, and I've got Dan Sashanik in for Stuart. And then, of course, we got Sean Jeffries in, who you heard on the Blues. So, big question after yesterday, Carlos Martinez, he comes out, he gets booed almost immediately. It's kind of got all of the St. Louis fan base going at each other. What are your guys' opinions? Is booing okay? What do you think about what happened yesterday?
Yeah, I don't think you can tell the fans what they can do, what they can't do, who they can boo. He kind of deserved it after blowing Wainwright's gem of a game on Sunday, I thought. And then he gave up a leadoff double right off the bat. So he did calm down nicely and put that fire out and get out of that inning to give the Cardinals a chance to come back and win it in the 10th. But, yeah, I think boo away.
See, I'm on the opposite side here. I mean, he's our player. He's played well all season. Coming into the playoffs, he was like a 1.9 ERA in the last 15 games or something like that. He's given you good innings. Once again, he's our player. I don't see why the fans are, like Stu said off while we were at commercial. Cardinal fans didn't boo for the longest time. They didn't boo their own players. And in the past 10 years, we've started to boo our own players. And I think it's, I don't think it belongs in St. Louis. I'm sorry. But, I hate to disagree with you, Greg. But, yeah, he didn't have the greatest game. I'll give him that much. He threw a softball that got cranked. And, it is what it is. But he came back and he gave, after booing, he came back and gave you a great outing. Yeah, they got a nice crank to double off of him, but he finished out strong. And, once again, he didn't ask to be the closer. He was put in a position.
Would rather be a starter. I agree with that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sean?
I'm going to side more on Dan's side on this one. I think it's embarrassing as a fan to hear the home crowd booing the guy who he's the closer. It doesn't mean that the manager has to use him, but that's who he is. He's the team's closer. And I think it comes from a position of where a lot of fans think, I'm booing him. I think he sucks. So the manager won't play him because that's what I think. And so you can, push that out to like, oh, the manager sucks too because he's playing this guy who I think shouldn't play. When in reality, you're at home watching the game. What do you know? Nothing. And again, maybe support your guy because again, he's going to play. The manager's going to use him. He said he was going to use him. I didn't really agree with him. I wouldn't have put him in that game, but I certainly wouldn't have booed him if I was at the game and he came out.
Yeah, what kind of mind frame is he in now? He steps out of the bullpen and the first thing he hears is boos. I mean, that's got to put him in a different mind frame. Once again, shame on on all these Cardinal fans for booing him.
I agree.
I find it so weird because I watch so much European football that the way that they treat their own players in their own club is to defend them at all costs and to rally behind your players. If he's on your team, it doesn't matter if you deep down don't think he deserves to be on your team or whatever the case may be. Once they step over those lines and they're on the pitch or on the field, you are 100% supporting them through thick and thin. And a lot of times that atmosphere gets them over the line. That it's just so fascinating to me that in American sports, we spend so much time booing our own players when you should be spending that energy supporting your own players. And if you're going to boo, go after the other team. Boo every Brave that steps up to bat. Don't boo Carlos Martinez.
Yeah.
You should be cheering him on and getting him to be pumped up to come out there. It's such a wild thing for me to see from kind of an outsider perspective.
The first thing he hears are boos, and he gives up a double to the leadoff batter. Who's surprised? No one should be. But,
Interesting points.
So do you think tomorrow's game, win or loss, is that going to determine if this season is a failure or a success? I mean, if they lose, is it just you're just going to write it off as a failure? Or, obviously that's kind of asking you to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. So I'll ask you, what are you predicting tomorrow? And then does that determine failure or success?
I think they're going to win. I think Flaherty's going to have another good game. He had an air quote off game in the other day, but even that was
he had 2 off pitches. Basically.
Exactly. And you come to expect the perfection out of this guy for 8 innings, and if you don't get it for 2 batters, then it's not a great game. But he's going to be good again, and I feel like these guys are going to start hitting the ball. More of them will, other than Ozuna and Goldschmidt. And I think they'll win. I don't think if they lose that it's necessarily a failure. I mean, for me as a fan of the team, it's not a failure because my expectations are usually pretty low. And making the playoffs finally after a drought, I wouldn't always think just because you made the playoffs, you get a trophy. But I think for this particular team, it was a good step in a rebuilding time for them. And if they don't win tomorrow, it'll be disappointing. They blew a lot of chances that they had to capitalize on Braves' mistakes. But usually this team doesn't give up. And if you give them a second chance, that they'll take it and run with it.
I've been thinking about your question since I saw it a lot. I go back and forth. I think for me, the bottom line is if they lose, which I'm like Sean, I don't think they will. I think they're going to eke it out. But, they won 91 games. That's pretty good. They won their division. I don't think you can call either of those 2 things a failure. But the expectations are sky high, as always, for this franchise and fans. I'm sure management all expecting more than just winning a division and losing in the division series. I think so. I think those expectations are higher among the fan base, but I don't know. I have a hard time calling it a failure if they lose.
Yeah, I definitely don't see this season as a failure. Winning the Central is always, it's what Cardinal fans want. It's the only thing that we all think. Yeah,
it's your goal. It's kind of it's your immediate goal.
Exactly.
Now it becomes going on and
to a large degree, the division's minimum expectation from
I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You're out to win your division.
Yeah.
When the year starts, and that's what they did. So
exactly, and it's not. There's only 8 teams make the playoffs, and 10. I'm not going to count those. The play-in game don't really like that one off, but yeah, when you're looking at only 8 teams making the playoffs, and historically Cardinals are usually there. You just gotta give it to them. It's a heck of a season, and they, even as everybody was bad mouthing them all season. Mo. There was complaints about Mo all season about what he's doing with his team, but he made the right moves, and we won the division, and we're going to beat the Braves tomorrow night, and watch and see who our next target is.
It's certainly been reassuring to see that Paul Goldschmidt has absolutely lived up to the pressure that's been on his shoulders. He's got 2 home runs now in the series. He looks like that next Cardinal great in line to put up another big postseason.
Yeah, him and Ozuna. The 2 of them have accounted for 15 of the Cardinals' 33 hits in this series. So that's almost half the offense just on those 2 guys. Yep. Ozuna, probably more so than Goldschmidt, is swinging a hot bat. But
are there any changes you're expecting tomorrow, or maybe ones you want? I've seen a lot of people online that mention maybe Dexter Fowler should get moved out of the lineup or moved in the batting order. He was 0 for 5.
He was 0 for 5 yesterday, but he was smoking the ball if you watch the game. He made some hard outs yesterday. I would not. No, well, I guess the question becomes, who do you put in for him?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
The pickings are kind of slim. you have good ball players on the bench, but most of these guys have very little experience, and it's not really the time or the place to
Right. I agree.
count on a guy or put so much pressure on that guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is the team that got you here. Why change it now?
yeah.
Kinda, right?
And you have 3 of your main cogs from the regular season, Fowler, DeYoung, and Wong, who have all been striking out a lot. They're not getting even just base hits very often.
Yeah, Wong got a key hit in that rally yesterday.
So you look at, I think maybe you look at moving guys around in the lineup a little bit. I would love to see DeYoung move down in the lineup because he's just not looking right at the plate. But it's a guy. He was an all-star, for goodness sake.
Hit 30 home runs.
You can't leave a guy like that out of the lineup just because he's in a slump. And in the playoffs, you count on these guys, and you're going to have to get production from them if you're gonna win. So
Yeah, I'd like to bring in Bader to replace Fowler, but at the same time, are you guaranteeing that he's going to be hitting? And not to mention, once he gets on base, we're not playing the small ball that we would utilize his speed for. So, I'd much rather I prefer him in center at all times defensively. But right now, you have to put your faith in Dexter right now, and he is going to produce. And if I might look stupid, but I'm going to say he's going to do something big Wednesday night. And yeah, I'm going to say that now.
well, I feel that way every time they come up.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys all have the capability to do it. I'm super down on DeYoung right now. But if they could maybe move him down in the lineup and he's not in that prominent spot right in the middle, I wouldn't feel quite as bad when he strikes out again. But, you eventually you're going to have people that either have to step up or you're not going to win. And
I think you're
just
right. Your all-stars have to be your best players. And if you're going to win, DeYoung's going to have to come through. And
yeah, I mean, you can't take those gloves out of the infield, Wong or DeYoung. I mean, they sucked up so many double balls the other day. They didn't, missed 1 or 2 of them, but it wasn't for lack of trying. It was, Braves got some speed, so they put it to us.
And my apologies to Cardinals Nation. I should have probably started this whole segment off talking about the greatness of Yadier Molina. I'm sorry I haven't brought it back around this way yet, but after that performance yesterday and the amount of clutch situations he's come with over his career, where do we put him on Cardinals Nation Mount Rushmore? I mean, is he in the pantheon of all-time greats?
Oh,
it's got to be, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I've heard people talking on the radio this morning that he's potentially the greatest Cardinal ever. And despite the kinds of talent that has come through St. Louis, I don't necessarily agree with that, but there's no question that Yadier Molina's a future Hall of Famer.
Was that a Bernie Miklasz hot take right there?
It might have been. It might have been.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's hard to argue, though. I mean, he's just clutch.
You're almost not surprised by it when it happens.
No.
Because
Not at all.
he just does that. That's what he does.
And, you're almost to the point where if you need a key at bat late in the game in a playoff scenario, you're kind of hoping it's Yachty.
Yeah. How many times when he steps up to the plate, you're like, oh man, no. Every single person is like, this is the guy that I want in the box right now.
And how did the Braves not know he was going to jump on that first pitch? I mean, he
does it all the time.
I mean,
I don't understand that either.
And to me, it's even more fascinating because he puts so much of his mental energy into the other side of the game. He's calling so much of the game. Like we've talked about off air, a lot of catchers rely on their manager to call the game for them. But Yadier's got such clout with this team that Schilt is definitely deferring, I think, a lot of the game management to Yadi, maybe give him some strategy. But he puts so much emphasis on the pitching side of it and making sure all of his pitchers are getting good starts, that it's even more impressive to me that he's doing what he does offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. I think early in his career, he was bagged a little bit for not being as good at the plate as he was behind it. And he really concentrated and picked that part of his game up. And that's why he is one of the greatest and, certainly a Hall of Famer. I hear there's still an argument out there that people think he's not, and I think that's crazy. But
he's definitely, I would think, going to have a statue outside Busch Stadium someday. He'll have that red coat, that the Cardinal fans seem to take very seriously.
Yeah,
But,
the number 4 is going to be retired.
I would
for
think
sure.
so.
And to Dan's point, you expect him to come up. Your first thought is not, oh no, it's him. It's like, oh, thank goodness it's him.
Yeah.
Molina's hitting 188 in this series, but you still expect when he comes up, he's going to be the guy to get that big hit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we're all assuming that Atlanta goes down tomorrow.
Well, I believe my prediction's already blown out of the water. I said Cardinals in 4.
Sean had a sweep.
They didn't sweep, I don't think.
If you had a choice, are you looking at LA or Washington? Do you have a preferred option if we're kind of prognosticating a little farther?
I think if the Cardinals win tomorrow and they play the Dodgers in the NLCS, the Cardinals will win. But I don't think that they'll be able to beat Washington in the NLCS.
Well, I mean, I disagree with that slightly. I mean, they'd get home field against Washington, which would be
Huge.
reason to root for them. Washington has been just pounding Scherzer and name escapes me. Strasburg. I think Scherzer even said yesterday he feels like his arm's just hanging there at this point.
They're like 120 something pitches.
They're really working those guys hard to get through this series. So you got to think they're going to be – everybody's tired this time of year. But I don't know. It's kind of like the Blues when they were getting to the conference final. Like, who do you want to play? It's like everybody's going to be good at this point. And to win a championship, you're going to have to go through some good teams. So I guess I'd go with home field.
I'd like to play the Dodgers. I mean, just because it's it's a team that you always want to beat.
Yeah, that's true.
Washington Nationals. I mean,
they're
good every 16, 20 years.
Dodgers Cardinals is sexy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what everybody wants to see, and that's what Dodger fans are probably looking at.
It would be cool to get a Dodger Cardinals and LCS followed by a Yankees Cardinals World Series. I mean, you can't. That's about as historic as it gets there. But
that's a good point that you made, though, about the Washington pitchers being, really ground down to stubs practically. To face them in the NLCS, maybe the Cardinals would have a bit of an advantage that I wasn't thinking about. I just know they historically they do well against the Dodgers in the playoffs.
They don't seem to have any trouble with Kershaw. But they have a good they seem like they do pretty well against Scherzer too. So
that's true.
And that the Washington lineup offensively isn't quite as imposing to me as the Dodgers offense, but again, everybody's good this time of year.
So there you have it. We're all picking the Cardinals tomorrow to win in 5 and then go on to the NLCS. Keep your eyes on the game, 4:02 p.m. tomorrow, Jack Flaherty on the mound. We're going to take one more quick break, and then I'm going to be back with Stuart Holmgren as we break down STLFC and their upcoming playoff.
Hey guys, this is Emily from Office Essentials. Is your company or organization thinking about moving, remodeling, or expanding? Office Essentials has a long history of helping our customers with their office furniture projects. From inspiration to installation, our team has the experience and product knowledge to outfit your company with furniture tailored to your vision, budget, and schedule. We offer a comprehensive process to perfect your project. We can help you with understanding your needs, space planning and design, budget management, coordinating your project from start to finish, product receiving and staging in our 50,000 square foot warehouse, professional delivery, installation, and assembly, ongoing service and warranty support, and we have an expansive selection of furniture options from top brands and an impressive showroom to support your vision. Office Essentials is your hometown supplier of all the office supplies and furniture you need to run and grow your business. Learn more today at stlofficesupplies.com.
All right, welcome back. I've got Stuart Holmgren. We're going to do a little one-on-one segment around St. Louis FC. They've got 3 games left in the regular season. Hopefully a nice little playoff run coming up. Stuart, good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to be back on.
So we've got upcoming game tomorrow Then we've got Saturday at home against Pittsburgh, and then finally next Saturday, the final game at North Carolina FC. Currently sitting in 9th position on 42 points. What's kind of your assessment of the team right now and what you see for the final 3 games?
First, I'm going to give a quick little breakdown on what St. Louis FC is, who they are, and where they play. So St. Louis FC is in the United Soccer League, USL, which is the second level of professional soccer in the United States and Canada. And so it's completely professional, not amateur. It's separate entirely from how you'd expect like a AAA baseball or an AHL type system, in that these teams aren't, for the most part, owned by MLS teams. They're independent teams, so kind of like how the old independent baseball leagues used to go. But there is a connection to MLS, as there's affiliations, or there are also MLS reserve teams that do play in the USL. So anyways, St. Louis FC started off the season pretty hot, got out to top of the table, top of the Eastern Conference, and since then they kind of fell off, went real cold over the summer, but had a nice Open Cup run. Open Cup is similar to FA Cup for people who are kind of familiar with how the soccer system works in the UK. It's just a competition that you get about 100 or so teams involved in around the US, and they play a NCAA bracket style tournament where it's single elimination. So you get some really interesting, cool matchups where you could have a Los Angeles Galaxy with David Beckham back in the day going up against La Maquinas, a pub team from Los Angeles. So, and they actually, this was years later after Beckham, but a team like that actually did almost take out Los Angeles, and you do get upsets like that. And the 2 biggest upsets in this year's tournament, Open Cup, were St. Louis beating both MLS's FC Cincinnati and Chicago Fire. So it's been an exciting season. It's winding down now after a cold summer. St. Louis FC's picked up a bit, rattled off 5 straight wins, and now they are in 9th place going into the last 3 games of the season.
Can you give us a quick breakdown of how the new playoff format works this year? Because it's a little bit of a change from years past with the 7, 8, 9, 10 seeds.
Yeah. So previous years, it was a hockey style breakdown, or the old school hockey style breakdown, or 1-8, that kind of thing. 1-8, 2-7, etc. This year, they're doing a play-in round, which will be the 7th place team will host the 10th place team, and 8 host 9. And the top or highest ranked teams there will play, 1 and 2 ranked teams. So right now it looks like St. Louis FC would play away at Ottawa FC if things go to plan, but I believe St. Louis FC is 1 point up on Birmingham Legion for that 10th spot. So it'll come down to, it might be 2 points. It's coming down to the wire for St. Louis FC. And on Wednesday, tomorrow, whenever this airs, it might be today, they are playing away at Loudoun United. And Loudoun is actually Loudoun County in
Virginia, I believe.
Virginia, right? Yeah, outside Washington, D.C. And they are D.C. United's reserve team. So for the most part, they've been a pushover team, but St. Louis FC has really struggled against teams lower than them on the table. They've done very well against teams higher on the table.
Any particular reason why? Is it because just the way those the teams higher up on the table play them, or does that have anything to do with Pulis' system?
Pulis, the team definitely seems to get up for games that they play against tougher competition, and some of those happened. Some of the lower table teams, those matches happened in that cold spell where there was kind of an Open Cup hangover that St. Louis FC was experiencing. But Loudoun's actually hitting a hot streak right now, so it'll be a tough game, but it's definitely 3 necessary points And then on Saturday is the last home game of the season, and they're always fun. And this is against Pittsburgh Riverhounds. And the Riverhounds are one of those old school Division II teams in America. They've been around forever under various names, various logos. And they have, I think, what might be the coolest stadium or one of the most beautiful stadiums in American soccer. It's right on the Allegheny River, and they have train tracks running next to it. So at night, you can kind of get the sunset of Pittsburgh with the skyline in the background and trains. It's just a really cool stadium. So the Riverhounds are currently the best team in the East, so that'll be a tough one. But St. Louis FC's only lost 2 home games, I think, in the last 2 seasons, including last Saturday being one of them. So the team will definitely play well. I'd say a draw would be a good result against Pittsburgh. But hopefully it'll be more than that.
So do you have particular expectations that you think STLFC should have going into the playoffs? I mean, odds are they're almost certainly going to play the 1 seed or the 2 seed the way they're going in right now. Do we have any reason to believe that they could actually knock off one of those 2 top sides away?
Absolutely. The team definitely struggles away, but Poulis, having the pedigree that he does a really good job setting up a game plan against a lot of teams. So that the talent is maybe not quite there compared to a Pittsburgh Riverhounds or a Tampa Bay Rowdies, who, I mean, St. Louis FC is a very, very talented team, but maybe they don't quite have the pace or the attacking threat of some of those. But the team's definitely good enough to make a deep run. But it's been a very Jekyll and Hyde type year, so it really depends on which team shows up.
So they're a real wild card when it comes to the playoff format. And do you think that they'll sit back in like a low block, or are they the type of team that's just going to go out and counterattack and press? Or what do you see the dynamic being when they play a 1 seed or a 2 seed in terms of actually tactically on the pitch?
Well, it depends, because they've changed how they play depending on the game. A few weeks ago against Birmingham Legion, who's a pretty aggressive team, St. Louis FC played a high press in the second half, and really that led to the second goal of that match. And then this past Saturday against Louisville, they had no press, and for a large portion of the game, they just gave Louisville the half the field and soaked up pressure. So it depends on what lineup he puts out there. Also, he's done a wide variation in midfield and wingers this year. Pretty solid center backs the whole time in Kavita and Fink, but you never quite know what he's going to do at right and left back, or who he'll rotate up top necessarily outside of Greg and Blackwood's been the recent addition, who's been just absolutely amazing, even if he is from Spurs territory.
And for anyone that's listening to this right now that maybe they're going to watch a match for the first time in the playoffs, is there a player or two that you think they should earmark to kind of keep their eye on, and maybe a little bit of their backstory?
Well, Tyler Blackwood came in halfway through this season from Sacramento. He came over in a trade just a few games ago, and I believe he has 6 goals in 8 games now. So he's played very well. And he is one of those guys who's from Northern London. I referenced he's a Spurs fan. And after every game, he comes over and greets the fans, talks to the fans. He's very apparent that this is a passion for him. After the loss on Saturday, he came into the fan shop and shook everyone's hand who was in the fan shop. That was a nice touch.
Am I mistaken, or did he come through QPR's academy? I can't remember if that's correct. Can you?
He had a trial with QPR and played in 1 game and I think a couple cup matches for them. He came through maybe Walsall. He came through a different youth academy, and then he went to UCF or USF and another Florida college. So he kind of did the Dom Dwyer little thing, but he definitely has a good deal of talent. So he's definitely one to watch. Midfield, Lewis Hilton, he's another Englishman, and he's kind of that number 8, pivots everything. And on the back line, if you want to look at a St. Louis boy, Captain Sam Fink, number 4, has been with the St. Louis FC club, Scott Gallagher club since he was 8 years old. So he's St. Louis born and bred through and through. So he's really that stalwart that you want anchoring your spine.
So just for anyone that's listening right now, be sure to go to STLFC's website. There's still some great seats I'm sure that are available for Saturday's game. Again, it's against the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. They're top of the East. It's a really important game kind of in terms of the positioning that STLFC will have going into the play-in round. So definitely try to get your tickets for Saturday night's game. And Stuart, is there anything you're a Fulham supporter, I'm a Liverpool supporter. Is there anything across the pond in the Championship or the Premier League that's kind of got your attention right now as we go into an international break?
Well, if we want to do some championship takes, a local boy, Tim Ream, St. Louis podcast, he's doing well with Fulham again this year, anchoring their center half pairing with Alfie Mawson. Fulham's been slightly underwhelming, but right now they still sit within attacking distance of the top 6. Fulham's really going for an automatic promotion this year, so they want to finish top 2. But championship is such a crapshoot, especially at this point in the season.
There's just so many matches that you got to go through.
Yeah, at this point last year, Norwich City was in 17th, and they won the league. So
that's good to know.
Who knows?
Yeah. Speaking of Tim Ream, you had mentioned him. Do you think he's a potential first signing for the St. Louis MLS team when they come here? Or do you think that's just kind of too much of a fairy tale scenario for him?
It's definitely a possibility. He does own a house in St. Louis, and he comes back here constantly. He keeps up on all St. Louis news, and he follows St. Louis FC and Scott Gallagher pretty closely.
For those who aren't aware, he went to St. Dominic High School, so he's definitely a local boy through and through.
Yeah, and he is definitely planning on moving back and settling in St. Louis, him and his wife, Kristen, once he retires. But he definitely plans on staying. He told an interview podcast with Amsterdam Tavern a few weeks ago, he plans on playing in England until he can't play in England anymore, and his contract's up in 2021 with Fulham, and at that point he might move to another London club. I could see him dropping down a league, or he could move to MLS. I mean, if there aren't offers, but if there's an offer in England, I expect him to stay in England.
Well, I think that will do it for our podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening. We'll be back again same time next week with another episode. Week with another episode.